It started as a quiet day in the deep stretches of the galaxy, where light took years to cross the empty distance between stars. Traders moved through the trade lanes. Small ships carried supplies to mining colonies, and everyone believed the outer rim was safe from anything unusual. Then something happened that no one could explain. A pulse of gravity rolled through space like a silent wave. Sensors on hundreds of stations picked it up at once. It did not come from a planet or a dying star. It came from nothing. At first, the pulse was ignored. The local outposts had seen strange readings before and blamed their old machines. But when the same distortion appeared again, stronger this time, the scientists grew uneasy. The signal was too sharp, too controlled, and too symmetrical to be natural. It looked like something had folded space and then unfolded it again. A few technicians joked that maybe someone was testing a new drive system. No one laughed for long. Hours later, the telescopes at a remote station caught sight of a shape forming out of the empty dark. It was huge, far larger than any known vessel in that sector. It came through the distortion like a shadow rising from deep water. There was no bright engine trail, no sign of energy exhaust, no broadcast of identity, only silence. The structure glowed faintly along its edges as if wrapped in thin lightning. Then the glow faded, leaving behind a ship so large that its outline blocked the stars behind it. The first report spread slowly. People thought it was a rumor, another story from bored patrol crews, but more outposts confirmed it one after another. Soon, every major communication network was talking about the same thing. A ship of unknown origin had appeared without warning. Observers compared the hull material with known databases and came to a shocking match. The design pattern was human. The galaxy had known about humans for a long time, but very few had ever seen them. Centuries ago, they had withdrawn from open contact after a series of tense border events. Since then, no one knew how far their technology had grown. Most believed the humans had chosen isolation because they were weak compared to the great empires that ruled space. The appearance of that ship forced everyone to reconsider that belief. The first clear image arrived through a long-range drone. The ship was shaped like a spearhead, black as deep stone, with lines that looked too sharp to be natural. Its surface shimmered slightly as if covered with invisible waves of heat. When the drone's sensors tried to scan the hull, the data came back distorted. Every wavelength reflected at the wrong frequency. It was as if the ship was not made of ordinary matter. The scientists stared at the numbers in disbelief. Some thought the readings meant the ship was surrounded by a controlled gravitational field, bending light itself around it. While most civilians were amazed, the military forces of nearby systems felt something closer to fear. They knew what such readings meant. It meant the ship was using a form of power none of them had mastered. Rumors grew fast. Some claimed it was a planet destroyer. Others said it was an exploration craft that had come to observe. The truth was that nobody knew. The ship did not speak, did not move aggressively, and did not react to anyone's messages. It simply stayed in orbit above a barren moon, turning slowly as if watching. Inside the Galactic Council headquarters, the alarms did not stop. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss what to do. The atmosphere was tense and full of doubt. They had spent years maintaining peace through trade and diplomacy. The sudden arrival of a massive human warship threatened to break that fragile balance. The council demanded reports from every listening post. They wanted to know whether the ship had sent any transmission, whether it had shown signs of weapon activity, whether it intended to invade. The answers were all the same. Nothing. Silence. On the trade networks, merchants began to change their routes. No one wanted to pass near the system where the ship appeared. Passenger traffic dropped sharply. Insurance companies raised their prices for any cargo moving near that zone. The effect rippled outward like a chain reaction. Within days, a quiet sector of the galaxy had turned into the center of everyone's fear and curiosity. A few brave explorers decided to take their small craft closer to get visual confirmation. One of them managed to record a short sequence before his sensors failed. The footage showed the ship's hull reflecting distant stars as if it were made of polished liquid metal. For a moment, it looked as if the ship breathed, its surface pulsing faintly in rhythm, maybe a result of internal systems or something alive within. Before the transmission cut, a low sound echoed through the explorer's communication feed. It was not a word, not even a language, just a low hum that seemed to vibrate in the bones of whoever heard it. When the explorer's craft returned, every system was burned out, but he was alive. He said the closer he went, the more his instruments failed. Magnetic fields twisted, and lights flickered as if the ship was absorbing every bit of energy around it. He described it as standing near the edge of a thunderstorm so big that space itself seemed to bend under its weight. He could not say if the ship was hostile. He only knew that no one could approach it without losing control of their equipment. The story reached the central worlds. People gathered in public squares to watch the live feeds. News anchors repeated the same question over and over. Why now? Why had humanity, silent for so long, sent a ship here? Theories spread quickly. Some said it was a warning. Others believed it was a test, a way to see how the galaxy would react. A few optimists claimed it was a peace mission, though the size and design of the ship made that difficult to believe. Across military command rooms, officers studied the images carefully. They compared the hull shape to old human designs, trying to guess its purpose. Some believed it was a carrier built to launch smaller ships. Others thought it might be a mobile base. But one thing was certain. Its power output was beyond any standard chart. The readings suggested that it carried enough energy to run a whole planet for decades. That alone made everyone nervous. On one colony near the border, miners working on the night shift stopped to watch the glowing dot in the sky. It looked harmless from that distance, like a star that refused to twinkle. They did not know they were watching history unfold. One of them said softly that maybe the humans had returned to remind the galaxy who they were. Another laughed and said no one could make the galaxy afraid anymore. But inside, they both felt the same chill. As the days passed, the warship still did not move. It stayed fixed above the same moon as if waiting for something. Scientists sent countless signals, coded greetings, even light patterns meant to attract attention. The ship ignored them all. Some experts said it might not even have a crew, that it could be controlled remotely or run by an artificial system. Others thought the silence was deliberate. Maybe the humans wanted everyone to see it, to wonder and to realize how small they were in comparison. Then a second pulse shook the nearby systems, shorter than the first but stronger. This time, several ships in orbit lost navigation for a full minute. Gravity twisted unpredictably. Afterward, the giant vessel shifted position slightly, turning its bow toward the star of that system. It was the first sign of movement since its arrival. Every radar station lit up with alerts. Military fleets across the region went on high readiness. Yet the ship did not attack. It simply aligned itself and stayed that way, pointing at the heart of the system like a sleeping giant watching the sunrise. In the following hours, debate consumed the Galactic Council. Some representatives demanded immediate contact with the human authorities, if any still existed. Others insisted on sending warships to form a blockade around the mysterious visitor. A few wiser voices urged patience, reminding everyone that no human weapon had fired, no communication had come, and that rushing to act could turn curiosity into conflict. But fear is louder than reason. Many remembered the old records of human wars, how they fought fiercely when threatened, how they never surrendered once provoked. Throughout the galaxy, ordinary people followed every development. Conversations in spaceports, schools, and marketplaces always ended with the same topic. What would the humans do next? Would they speak? Would they leave? Would they strike? Each passing day without an answer made the silence heavier. The longer the ship remained, the more it felt like a presence rather than an object, something that was thinking, watching, perhaps judging. A week after the first pulse, the gravitational field around the ship stabilized. The sensors now showed a calm zone of energy, steady and controlled. It looked like the ship had completed some kind of calibration or preparation. The scientists could only guess. One researcher compared it to a deep breath before action. He said quietly that maybe the ship was not there by accident. Maybe it had chosen this place for a reason. In the empty sky above the barren moon, the human warship floated like a dark monument. It did not shine. It did not speak. But every heartbeat in the galaxy seemed to echo its presence. No one could escape the feeling that a line had been crossed. The silence of the humans was more powerful than any weapon, because it forced every other civilization to face a question they were afraid to ask. If this was only one ship, what waited behind it? And so the first part of the story ended not with a battle or an explosion, but with stillness. A ship appeared from nowhere. The strange ship floating above the barren moon had turned the galaxy restless. Every communication channel buzzed with the same question. What did the humans want? No one had heard from them in generations, and now one of their warships sat silently, ignoring every message sent its way. For the first time in decades, the Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Inside the tall glass hall of the council, tension filled the air. Dozens of species gathered, their voices overlapping as they argued about what to do. Some believed the humans had returned in peace. Others were certain it was a show of strength. The council's head translator stood helpless in the middle, trying to keep order, but no one was willing to listen. The fear of the unknown had already taken control. The reports on the table were clear but unsettling. The human vessel had not moved since its arrival. It had not fired a single weapon, but every time a ship came too close, its systems glitched or lost power. The strange energy field surrounding it seemed to drain or distort anything near it. Scientists tried to explain it, but the truth was that no one really understood how it worked. It was technology far beyond their reach. One of the senior council members spoke slowly, suggesting that they should treat this as a diplomatic event. He reminded everyone that the humans had once been part of the council's network of civilizations, long before they chose isolation. Maybe they had returned for trade or communication, but his voice was drowned out by louder ones calling for security. To them, a warship was not a messenger. It was a warning. Military advisors from several worlds urged the council to take defensive action. They claimed that if the ship stayed any longer, it might send more signals or call for reinforcements. The council's control screen showed every nearby system going on alert. Fleets were quietly being repositioned, and space stations began storing extra energy reserves. The galaxy was preparing for something it didn't even understand. Meanwhile, news networks ran non-stop coverage. People everywhere stayed awake through the night, watching live images of the ship on their screens. Its stillness was both beautiful and terrifying. Children asked their parents why the humans had returned, but the adults had no answers. Some saw the event as destiny, others as danger. The feeling that history was changing filled every home, every corridor, every outpost. A few hours later, smaller patrol fleets were sent to monitor the human ship from a safe distance. Their orders were simple: observe, record, and do not engage. They stayed far enough away to avoid interference. Through their sensors, they watched the dark surface of the warship flicker occasionally, as if energy was moving beneath its outer shell. Every flicker sent ripples of radiation across the nearby vacuum, and each reading was stored carefully for study. Inside those patrol ships, officers spoke in low voices. One of them said it felt like watching a sleeping giant. Another replied that maybe it wasn't sleeping at all. Maybe it was just waiting. They had all seen powerful fleets before, but this one ship felt different. It didn't just occupy space, it commanded it. Even silence seemed to bend around it. Back in the council hall, arguments grew louder. A group of hardline leaders demanded permission to send an escort fleet. They said it was necessary to show strength and ensure the humans knew who controlled this region. The council voted, and after hours of heated discussion, the majority agreed to send a small group of heavily armed ships toward the system. Officially, it was a peaceful escort mission. Unofficially, it was a test. When the fleet departed, every eye in the galaxy followed it. Transmission feeds showed the ships moving through the cold dark like shining arrows. They sent repeated messages to the human vessel, asking for identification and intent. Each message echoed into silence. There was no answer. The commanders grew uneasy but continued their approach. They stopped just beyond the range of the ship's energy field, unsure of what would happen next. For long minutes, nothing moved. The human ship remained still, its surface black and quiet. Then one of the escort captains, nervous from the silence, decided to send a pulse signal. It was meant to be harmless, just a gentle wave to test the field around the ship, but the moment it hit the invisible barrier, it vanished like a drop of water into sand. The scanners recorded nothing returning. The field absorbed it completely. Before anyone could react, the screens on the escort ships flickered. Power readings spiked and then dropped to 0. Communication links cut out one by one. The crew scrambled to regain control, but their systems refused to respond. It lasted only a few seconds, yet it felt like an eternity. Then, as suddenly as it started, everything returned to normal. The ships drifted in silence, engines frozen, sensors blank. The human vessel had done nothing visible. It had not moved or fired. Still, the fleet was paralyzed. When contact with the escort group was finally restored, confusion spread across the Council's command center. The fleet's recordings were corrupted, their data full of static and unreadable patterns. Every image of the human ship was distorted as though the light itself had been twisted. The Council's analysts couldn't explain it. They could only say that whatever power was behind that ship was far beyond their technology. The Council meeting that followed was worse than the first. Panic had replaced debate. Some accused the humans of testing a weapon. Others insisted that the energy field was a defense mechanism, not an attack. The argument went in circles. No one could agree on what to do. The more they talked, the clearer it became that fear was breaking their unity. For the first time in decades, the Council members began to suspect one another. While they argued, transmissions from civilian sectors revealed growing unrest. On many worlds, people demanded answers. Some wanted their governments to contact the humans directly. Others wanted to evacuate entire systems near the warship. Traders refused to carry shipments through that region, and the economy began to shake. A single silent ship was causing the whole galaxy to lose balance. A small group of scholars tried to calm the situation. They reminded everyone that humans were explorers by nature, not conquerors. Maybe this ship had come to recover something or to observe cosmic changes. They pointed to the fact that no one had been harmed. Their words were logical, but logic could not quiet fear. Too many remembered the old stories about how humans once fought back when threatened. In a quiet corner of the Council's headquarters, a few officers watched the latest scans. The energy readings from the ship had stabilized again. It seemed as if the human vessel had adjusted itself to the surrounding environment. One of the officers whispered that maybe the humans could hear every word the Council said. Maybe the ship was listening. The others said nothing, but their expressions showed they shared the same thought. Outside, in the living quarters of the capital world, life slowed down. People stayed home, watching the skies as if expecting to see the ship appear above their own horizon. Children drew pictures of giant vessels with glowing lights. Adults spoke in hushed tones. Even music channels began playing slower, softer tunes, as if the whole galaxy was holding its breath. Back in the system where it all began, the human warship remained motionless. Its dark hull caught the light of the nearby star, casting a long reflection across the barren moon. Around it, small bits of debris drifted quietly, leftovers from old mining stations long abandoned. The patrol ships kept their distance now. No one dared to approach again. The silence became its own message. By the end of the week, the Galactic Council had lost control of the situation. Regional commanders were acting on their own, moving fleets without permission. Each believed the others might start a fight and wanted to be ready. The unity that had held for centuries began to crack. The presence of a single human ship had done what no war ever could. It made every powerful leader afraid. The final decision that day was to stop all further approach attempts. The Council agreed to monitor from afar and wait for any sign of communication from the humans. But even that vote felt weak and uncertain. Many believed it was already too late. The galaxy had shown its fear, and if the humans were watching, they now knew how divided their observers were. Somewhere deep within that massive vessel, unseen by any sensor, perhaps someone was indeed watching. Or perhaps it was empty, acting on silent instructions given long ago. No one could tell. What mattered was that it had already changed everything. Across 1,000 worlds, the mention of humanity now carried both wonder and dread. And so, while the ship stayed still in the black sea of stars, the galaxy around it began to unravel. Commanders doubted their orders. Leaders doubted their allies. The Council that once ruled with calm precision now stood on shaky ground. All because of one warship that appeared out of folded space, said nothing, and waited. The story of that moment spread everywhere, told in every tongue. Some said it was the start of a new age. Others whispered that it was the beginning of the end. But none could deny the truth that hung silently over them all. Humanity had made its presence known again, and from that day forward nothing in the galaxy would ever feel certain again. The quiet in the Council chamber after the failed escort mission felt heavier than any storm. The leaders had run out of confident words. The human ship still hung in orbit above the barren moon, silent and unmoving. Yet its presence controlled the entire galaxy. Every government now acted like it was walking on glass. Even the bravest military officers hesitated to make a single move without 10 layers of approval. The report from the crippled escort fleet had shaken everyone. No weapons had fired, no attack had taken place, yet the entire group had lost control for seconds that felt like forever. The recordings were filled with static, and half the data was unreadable. Scientists spent days analyzing it, but nothing made sense. The energy readings twisted in impossible ways, as though space itself had been rewritten for that brief moment. Many council members wanted to believe it was a malfunction. They needed to believe that because the alternative was terrifying. If the human ship could disable advanced fleets without firing, it meant their technology was centuries ahead. No one wanted to say that out loud, but the thought was on every mind. While the council debated, the citizens of the galaxy were growing restless. Every news channel, every broadcast, and every public square showed the same image: the silent black ship over the moon. People began to form theories of their own. Some claimed it was not a warship at all, but a messenger from a peaceful era of humanity. Others were sure it was an ancient relic waking up after centuries of sleep. A few even believed it was controlled by no one, that it acted on its own like a living being made of metal and memory. Across different worlds, the reactions were mixed. On some planets, people gathered to watch the sky and pray that the humans would not see them as enemies. On others, military parades were organized to show that they were not afraid. The truth was that everyone was afraid. Fear was spreading faster than any fleet could travel. The council tried to calm the public, releasing statements that there was no sign of aggression, but the calm words sounded empty when matched against the unknown. They promised that the situation was under control, yet everyone knew it wasn't. The most advanced civilizations of the galaxy were standing still because of a ship that refused to even speak. Then came the moment that no one expected. A private cargo vessel, unaware of the restricted zone updates, drifted too close to the human warship's orbit. The pilot had taken a shortcut to save time, thinking the warnings were exaggerated. For several minutes, his transmissions continued normally. He even described the ship in awe, calling it the most beautiful and frightening thing he had ever seen. Then his signal broke. The last sound was a gasp of surprise, followed by silence. His ship's tracking beacon vanished from every radar. When search drones reached the area hours later, they found nothing. No debris, no wreckage, no trace. It was as if the vessel had never existed. The news spread instantly. Panic took hold again. Many demanded that the council take action. Others begged them to stay calm, fearing any move might provoke the humans. Inside the council hall, the leaders could feel the weight of every word. One decision could ignite a war that no one could win. In a private meeting, a small group of intelligence officers studied the data collected so far. They noticed a strange pattern. The gravitational field around the human ship was pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Every time the pulse peaked, signals nearby weakened or vanished. They wondered if the field was some kind of defensive layer or a communication method. No one knew. The council's chairperson ordered the creation of a scientific team to study the phenomenon from a distance. They were told to find a way to communicate safely. It was not an act of bravery, but desperation. The galaxy could not remain frozen forever. Someone had to make the first move that did not involve weapons. Days passed. The scientists sent coded light signals toward the human ship. Carefully timed bursts of light meant to represent mathematical patterns. It was a universal method used for contact with unknown species. For a long time, nothing happened. Then one night, the ship responded. At first, the readings seemed random, but as the team adjusted their sensors, the pattern became clear. The human ship was replying, repeating the same sequence of lights with slight variations. It was simple acknowledgement. For the first time, the galaxy had proof that the ship was not ignoring them. It was listening. The response sent waves of hope through the council. Maybe communication was possible after all. The scientists worked around the clock to design new signals, each more complex than the last. They tried to ask questions to form meaning. The ship answered only with short flashes of light, rhythmic and consistent but impossible to translate. It was like trying to speak to a being that understood but refused to explain. Every small reply became a headline across the galaxy. People watched in real time as the silent human vessel blinked back at the council's transmissions. Some saw it as a sign of peace. Others thought it was a warning. that the humans were reminding everyone they could listen whenever they wanted. Behind closed doors, the military factions were growing restless again. They did not like the idea of humans communicating directly. They feared the council might reveal too much or make mistakes that would endanger everyone. Rumors began to circulate that some commanders were planning independent actions without waiting for permission. Then something strange happened. The light pulses from the human ship stopped abruptly. The readings on every scanner dropped to 0. The ship turned slightly, its bow now facing the direction of the council's central world, though it was hundreds of light years away. For a few seconds, energy readings climbed rapidly, then fell back down to normal. No weapon fired, no explosion followed, but the meaning was clear enough. The ship was aware of where the council was. That single movement erased all calm. The council chambers filled with noise once again. Some leaders shouted to prepare defenses. Others pleaded to continue peace talks. The scientific team was ordered to stop all communication immediately until further notice. No one could agree on the next step. Far from the council world, in ordinary towns and colonies, people continued their lives, but with growing unease. Farmers looked up at the stars differently now. Traders avoided the routes that passed near the human ship's system. Pilots whispered stories of hearing faint vibrations through their hulls when traveling near that sector, like a distant hum following them through space. One historian recorded a simple observation in her journal. She wrote that the galaxy had once laughed at humanity for being reckless explorers, always seeking what others feared. Now those same civilizations trembled because humanity had returned. It was a quiet sentence, but it spread through the networks as a reminder that history was not finished repeating itself. The council tried to project stability, but inside, trust had started to collapse. Several member worlds began to withdraw their fleets, claiming they needed to protect their own borders. Others accused them of planning betrayal. The once unified galaxy was slowly dividing into pieces. Every few days, the sensors detected faint power fluctuations from the human ship, but nothing more. It neither advanced nor retreated. It waited. That waiting became unbearable. It felt like the calm before a storm that might never come, yet everyone prepared for it anyway. People began to notice something else too. The systems near the ship were becoming strangely quiet. Radio noise dropped to near silence. Even the natural electromagnetic signals from space seemed weaker. It was as if the human vessel was absorbing sound itself, creating a bubble of stillness. Pilots called it the shadow zone. Few dared to cross it. After several weeks, the Council's intelligence branch intercepted a faint coded signal from a remote probe. The message was short but clear. It confirmed that the ship had deployed small drones, too small to track but active around the moon's surface. The discovery reignited fears. What were those drones doing? Were they mining, repairing, or scanning? The possibilities were endless and none were comforting. In the following days, no one slept easily. Every broadcast ended with discussions about humanity's purpose. Some believed the humans were preparing for something larger. Others hoped they were merely reclaiming old technology. Whichever it was, the galaxy understood one thing. The balance of power had shifted forever. The mysterious warship, motionless and cold, had not spoken a single word, yet it had made every government question its strength, every leader doubt their power, and every citizen realize how fragile peace truly was. As another silent night passed in the system of the barren moon, the warship's lights dimmed once more, leaving only the faint outline of its hull against the starlight. Across millions of worlds, people stared at the same image and wondered if tomorrow would bring answers or the unknown. And so the galaxy waited again, holding its breath under the weight of that silence. Humanity had not fired, not threatened, and not explained, but they had already changed everything. The fear of what they might do next was more powerful than any action they could have taken. The calm had returned, but it was not peace. It was the fragile quiet of a galaxy, realizing it no longer stood at the center of its own story. Humanity was back in the picture, and even in silence they commanded the stars. The galaxy had grown quiet, but it was not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the silence that came after fear had settled too deep to talk about. Every government kept pretending they were calm, but behind closed doors every leader knew the truth. The human warship had divided the galaxy without even trying. The Galactic Council still met every day, though it no longer felt united. The chamber that once echoed with confident voices now carried only tired arguments and careful words. Everyone spoke slower, measuring what they said, afraid that one sentence might push someone else toward panic. The great alliance of civilizations that had lasted for centuries was now cracking like thin glass. Messages from far systems kept coming in. Reports of fleets moving quietly on their own, of allies refusing to share intelligence, of smaller worlds beginning to question if the Council could still protect them. Some leaders accused others of making secret deals with the humans. Some denied it. No one trusted anyone anymore. Outside the Council, ordinary people just wanted to understand. Every night they looked at the sky and wondered what the humans were doing. The image of the black warship floating above the barren moon had become part of their daily lives. It appeared on news screens, on posters, in songs, and even in quiet conversations at dinner tables. It was a mystery that everyone tried to explain in their own way. One farmer on a distant world said the humans had come to remind everyone to stay humble. A miner believed the ship was a warning for the powerful. A teacher told her students that maybe humanity had returned because the galaxy had forgotten kindness. No one really knew the reason, but somehow, the silence of that ship made everyone reflect on what they had become. While the public looked for meaning, the Council's top scientists continued to study the readings from the warship. They discovered something strange. The energy surrounding it wasn't just defensive, it was alive in some way. It reacted to nearby signals like a heartbeat speeding up when someone got too close. That discovery made everyone even more uncertain. It wasn't just a machine, it felt aware. The Council had lost most of its confidence, but still it needed to act. A small group of respected scientists proposed a new plan. Instead of sending fleets or messages, they suggested sending a probe carrying a symbolic gift. A gesture of peace, something simple and harmless. The idea was that humans might see it as a sign of respect. The vote took days. Some were terrified it would provoke the ship, while others said doing nothing would make the galaxy look weak. Finally, after long nights of debate, they agreed to the plan. A small unmanned probe was prepared. It carried a metal plate engraved with symbols representing unity, peace, and respect between civilizations. It was launched carefully with every camera in the galaxy watching. The probe drifted slowly through space, its path carefully plotted to avoid any sudden approach. As it neared the human warship, the tension across the galaxy grew unbearable. Billions of beings watched live broadcasts, holding their breath. The probe sent calm signals announcing peaceful intent. It entered the shadow of the ship, moving closer and closer. Then the transmission stopped. The screens went blank. For several minutes there was nothing. No signal, no light, no sound. Then the probe reappeared, moving away from the ship. Its instruments were burned out, its message unreadable. The plate it carried was gone. The council chambers filled with uneasy whispers. The humans had taken the message, but they hadn't replied. It wasn't rejection, but it wasn't acceptance either. It was something in between, something that kept everyone guessing. The meaning of that silence became the most debated mystery in the galaxy. In the days that followed, the galaxy changed in small, quiet ways. Military fleets stopped moving. Trade routes began to reopen slowly, though everyone still avoided the system with the human warship. Markets started to stabilize again, but no one felt normal. There was a strange awareness in the air, a shared understanding that something greater was watching from the shadows. In the middle of all that uncertainty, small changes began to appear near the moon where the warship floated. Drones scanning the area detected faint signals on the surface. It looked as if structures were forming, small metallic shapes spreading like roots across the gray rock. They were too symmetrical to be natural. The conclusion was clear. The humans were building something. This discovery shattered whatever calm the council had left. If the humans were building, it meant they planned to stay. Some leaders argued that this was proof of colonization. Others said it was harmless, maybe part of a repair process. But no one could agree. The longer they talked, the worse the tension grew. One member of the council finally said what many had been thinking quietly, that perhaps the galaxy should let the humans be. The humans had not attacked, not spoken, not destroyed anything. All the fear had come from assumption. Maybe the safest path was simply to respect their silence and keep distance. The statement caused outrage. Some saw it as surrender, others as wisdom. Yet deep down, many realized it was true. Every action so far had made things worse. The humans had only reacted when provoked. Their silence seemed almost patient, as if they were waiting for the galaxy to calm down enough to think clearly. While the council argued endlessly, something else began to happen far away. Civilizations that had long followed the Council's rules started to form their own smaller alliances. Some called them defense networks. Others called them independence unions. They no longer wanted to depend on a central command that could not make a decision. The idea of one great united galaxy was fading. In a quiet communication post near the border systems, a young technician noticed something unusual in the data stream. The human ship was no longer completely still. It had rotated slowly, facing a different angle, this time toward the empty space where once a human colony had existed centuries ago. The rotation was precise and deliberate, like a compass turning home. When the report reached the Council, it caused new waves of anxiety. Was it preparing to move? Was it calling others? The same question echoed everywhere. What comes next? Days passed, but the ship stayed where it was. No weapons, no movement, no sound. The only change was that its lights glowed slightly brighter now, forming faint lines along its hull. It looked almost like veins under skin, pulsing softly. The scientists didn't know whether it was a sign of communication or energy buildup. They could only record and wait. Across the galaxy, people had begun to live differently. The threat of the unknown had changed priorities. Some communities became kinder, helping one another more. Others turned colder, focusing on protection and survival. Fear had reshaped culture faster than any war could have done. The strange thing was that, amid all the fear, many also began to feel respect. The humans had not come as conquerors. They had appeared quietly, without destruction, and yet every empire, every fleet, every government had stopped to notice them. That kind of power, the power of presence, was something no one had ever seen before. A historian wrote that this was the first time the galaxy learned the meaning of silent strength. The humans did not have to raise a hand. They only had to exist, and the universe rearranged itself around them. Weeks later, the moon beneath the warship began to glow faintly in patterns. Drones recorded the movement of light across its surface, forming what looked like symbols or circuits. The scientists speculated that the humans were awakening something ancient, perhaps a hidden base from a forgotten time. The more they tried to study it, the more interference they faced. The energy readings grew so intense that no signal could stay stable near the area. The Council decided to restrict all access to that system completely. No ship was allowed to enter. The official reason was safety, but everyone knew it was fear. They were afraid of seeing what the humans would do next. On one quiet night, the communication channels of the entire galaxy went silent for exactly 6 seconds. Every satellite, every station, every network stopped transmitting. When the systems came back online, they all carried the same small message, written in simple text. It said only this: "Do not interfere." There was no source. The message appeared everywhere at the same time. It was short, clear, and human. No one could trace it. Every communication authority tried, but the origin was beyond known systems. The Council didn't need confirmation. They knew it came from the warship. It was the first time humanity had spoken in generations, and those 3 words were enough to freeze the galaxy once more. In that moment, the leaders understood what kind of power they were dealing with. It wasn't the power of weapons or fleets. It was the power of control over fear, time, and attention. Humanity had shown that they could reach anyone, anywhere without warning. The next day, the Council session ended early. No one argued. No one shouted. They simply sat in silence, realizing that the galaxy's command was slipping away from them. The humans didn't need to fight. Their silence, their single message, and their unseen hand had already reshaped everything. From that day on, the words, "Do not interfere," were remembered as the turning point. The moment when the galaxy's leaders realized that all their power, pride, and unity could vanish in an instant before the quiet will of humanity. And the human warship, still dark and silent above the moon, became a legend that spread across every corner of the stars. The galaxy had fallen into a strange rhythm of fear and curiosity. Every species, every government, and every traveler had one thing in common now. They all watched the same place. The system where the human warship floated had become the quiet heart of the universe. It was as if all the stars around it had dimmed a little, waiting for whatever would happen next. For weeks after the mysterious message appeared across every communication line, those 3 simple words, "Do not interfere," no one dared to act. The Galactic Council stopped sending patrols near that sector. Military fleets that once bragged about their strength now drifted quietly in safer orbits, avoiding any movement that might be misunderstood. Even smugglers and pirates stayed away, afraid of touching something beyond their understanding. The galaxy had learned to fear silence. But then came a signal, faint but real, from the same system. It wasn't from the warship. It came from the moon below it. The scientists in charge of long-range sensors noticed it first, a pulse of energy, repeating at regular intervals almost like a heartbeat. The pattern wasn't random. It carried structure, rhythm, and precision. The readings showed that something under the moon's surface had come alive. The discovery spread quickly through communication channels. Scientists, engineers, and historians from dozens of worlds began to speculate. Some said the humans were activating an ancient base. Others believed it was a communication device, perhaps meant to reach deep space. And a few quietly wondered if humanity was preparing something that the galaxy couldn't yet imagine. The council called another emergency session. The chamber felt heavier than ever before. The air itself seemed thick with uncertainty. Every representative arrived, but this time, no one raised their voice. They sat, spoke in careful tones, and studied the projections floating. In the center of the hall, the moon glowing, with faint lines of light, and the massive ship, hovering above it like a silent guardian. The head of the science division explained what they knew. The pulse came from deep underground, almost at the moon's core. Whatever was there had been buried for a very long time, possibly even before the first civilizations in the council existed. That meant humanity had placed it there in an age lost to time. That realization sent shivers through the room. Humanity hadn't just returned. They were reclaiming something they had left behind long ago. The warship wasn't an invasion. It was a retrieval. And that thought terrified everyone even more, because it meant the humans had planned this centuries, maybe millennia in advance. Across the galaxy, regular people began talking about the humans differently now. At first, they were seen as a danger. But now stories began to change. Some called them the builders of time, others the lost guardians. There was awe in their mystery. People spoke of them as if they were both human and myth. Some even believed the humans had never really left, that they had been watching quietly from hidden corners of the stars, waiting for this exact moment. Back near the moon, drones that had been left to observe from afar continued to send data. They showed that the lights on the moon's surface were spreading, creating symmetrical patterns. At one point, the design looked almost like a map of the stars, with glowing lines connecting to distant constellations. It was beautiful, mesmerizing even. Every scientist who saw it could feel that it meant something grand, something universal. Then the warship itself moved for the first time in weeks. Slowly, it lowered closer to the moon, its colossal frame reflecting the light below. No energy weapon was detected, no sound, no rush of engines, just an effortless descent, as though gravity itself obeyed its will. In living rooms, command centers, and observation stations across the galaxy, countless eyes watched in silence. The warship stopped just above the moon's surface and hovered there. Then the lights on both the ship and the moon synchronized. They pulsed together in perfect rhythm, like two hearts beating as one. Moments later, something extraordinary happened. A soft wave of light expanded outward. Not destructive, not violent, but calm and steady. It passed through nearby planets, through observation ships, through everything. Every sensor recorded it as harmless. Yet for a brief second, every living being who saw it felt something strange inside, a quiet emotion that no one could explain. Some described it as peace. Others said it felt like being seen, like the universe itself had acknowledged them. For the first time since the warship's appearance, the galaxy wasn't afraid. It was silent, yes, but not out of fear, out of wonder. After that, transmissions began appearing across neutral channels. Simple, coded patterns. The scientists quickly realized that these weren't random. They were mathematical sequences, universal in nature, used by civilizations to communicate logic and understanding. It was a message, but not one made of words, one made of numbers, harmony, and shared knowledge. Decoders worked tirelessly for days, comparing the sequences to ancient human archives. Eventually, the meaning became clear. It was a statement of identity, written not in language but in truth. It said, in essence, we are humanity. We have returned for what is ours. We seek no war. We restore what was lost. When this translation reached the council, it caused a deep silence. For the first time, the humans had spoken not through power, not through fear, but through calm declaration. Their purpose was not conquest, it was recovery. Still, the council couldn't decide how to respond. Some believed it was an opportunity to rebuild trust. Others were convinced it was a trick, a quiet way for the humans to test the galaxy's reactions. The old divisions returned, fear on one side, curiosity on the other. As the debates went on, smaller civilizations began to take their own paths. Some sent small probes filled with greetings, art, and peaceful gestures toward the human ship. None of those probes were destroyed. In fact, they all simply vanished near the moon's orbit, as if absorbed by light. Weeks later, faint transmissions began appearing from those probes, showing strange images, landscapes that looked both artificial and natural, glowing structures and energy flows unlike anything known. It was as though those probes had been taken into another layer of reality, beyond normal space. No one could explain it, but it gave hope. It meant that maybe, just maybe, the humans weren't enemies. In the far edges of the galaxy, people started forming small communities dedicated to studying human history. Museums reopened ancient records, uncovering stories of humanity's early expansion, their creativity, and their sudden disappearance long ago. The more they learned, the more they realized that humanity's return wasn't an attack. It was destiny completing its circle. And then one day, the human warship sent another message. It wasn't through voice or words this time. It came as a visual projection visible across the sky of several nearby planets. It showed a simple image, the moon beneath the warship glowing fully now, transformed into a massive sphere of light, and then fading away as the ship rose again into space. Within hours, sensors confirmed the truth. The moon was gone. Not destroyed, just gone as if it had never existed. The warship, too, had disappeared from all scans. The entire system fell quiet once more, empty and still. For the first time in months, the galaxy could breathe again. The humans had left, taking whatever they came for. There was no explosion, no battle, no conquest, only silence and mystery. The council gathered once more, but the discussion this time was different. There was no fear in their tone, only reflection. They had faced something beyond power, something that reminded them of how small and connected every civilization truly was. The humans had shown that silence could speak louder than war, that knowledge could be mightier than fear. From that day on, the galaxy changed in ways no one had predicted. Borders softened. Trade increased again. Some factions disbanded their war fleets entirely, choosing to invest in exploration instead. The event with the human warship had shaken everyone, but it also taught a lesson no one would forget. That control does not come from domination, but from understanding. Across the stars, songs and stories began to appear about the ship and the light. Poets called it the day the stars listened. Teachers used it as an example of how fear can blind even the most powerful minds. And historians called it the return of humanity. Years passed, but no one ever saw the warship again. Still, whenever a new star flickered in the dark, or a deep space signal echoed unexpectedly, people would whisper the same question: had humanity returned again? Somewhere else. The galaxy moved on, but something deep inside it had changed forever. The humans had not destroyed anything, but they had redefined everything. Their silence had become a mirror, showing every civilization what it truly was. And though the council slowly regained its structure, no one forgot that moment when the stars themselves seemed to pause in awe of a single human ship. It had come like a shadow, acted like light, and left behind a universe that would never look at humanity or itself the same way again. Time passed, but the memory of that human warship never faded. Even though the ship had disappeared and the moon had vanished with it, the feeling it left behind stayed alive across the stars. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something deeper, something that made entire civilizations rethink who they were and what they wanted to become. The galaxy slowly rebuilt itself after those strange events. The Galactic Council tried to return to its old ways, holding meetings and passing resolutions, but everyone there knew things had changed. The fear that once pushed them into arguing had turned into quiet reflection. They spoke differently now, softer, slower, like people who had finally understood that power alone didn't mean control. No one dared to send ships into the system where the warship had appeared. The area was declared a silent zone. It became a place of respect, even wonder. Explorers who passed nearby always turned off their engines and drifted quietly, almost like they were entering a temple. They said the stars there seemed brighter, as if they remembered something too. Scientists kept studying the data from the event. They analyzed every second of light, every signal, every reading from that strange energy wave the warship had released. None of it made full sense. It was too advanced, too perfect. The most talented minds in the galaxy worked for years trying to understand how the humans had created a wave that could pass through matter without causing harm, but still affect emotions and thoughts. No one could reproduce it. They began to realize that humanity's technology wasn't just power. It was art built from understanding that went far beyond machines. Over time, the story of the human ship turned into legend. Children grew up hearing about the silent warship and how it came and went without a single shot fired. Artists painted the ship floating over the moon, its shadow stretching over the stars. Musicians composed songs inspired by the rhythm of its glowing lights. In every culture, people found their own meaning in it. Some said the humans were guardians. Others believed they were travelers who had moved beyond time. A few even thought the warship was alive, carrying not just people but the soul of humanity itself. But in one corner of the galaxy, a small observatory made a quiet discovery. A faint signal, almost hidden in background radiation, appeared for a moment before fading. It matched the energy signature of the human warship perfectly. The scientists who found it didn't announce it publicly. They recorded it, studied it, and then sent a single encrypted report to the council. The message was short. It said only that the humans were still out there watching. The council debated whether to tell the public. Some wanted to keep it secret, fearing another wave of panic. Others said the people had a right to know. In the end, they decided not to announce it. But secrets in the galaxy never stay hidden for long. The information spread quietly from one group to another, until everyone had heard whispers of it. Humanity had not vanished. They had simply moved beyond sight. Instead of fear, though, something else grew. Hope. People began to feel that maybe humanity hadn't left forever. Maybe they were guiding from a distance, ensuring the galaxy didn't fall into chaos again. For the first time in centuries, there was a sense of unity, not through rules or commands, but through shared respect. Years later, something unexpected began to happen. Small devices, left long ago by the humans during their early journeys, started activating in forgotten places. Ancient satellites orbiting dead worlds, beacons buried in asteroid belts, relics hidden under ocean floors. Each one sent the same type of signal, calm and rhythmic like the heartbeat from the moon long ago. The message was always the same, mathematical, peaceful, and balanced. It was a reminder. The scientists decoded one of those signals and found that it contained maps of energy patterns, safe zones, stable routes, and regions that could sustain new life. It was as if humanity had left behind a guidebook for the galaxy to grow safely. No one could deny what it meant anymore. The humans had never planned destruction. They had planned balance. Every civilization began to send expeditions following those maps. What they found changed everything. They discovered planets full of strange ruins, some shaped like human structures, others built with alien styles but infused with human influence. It was proof that humanity had once reached far, living alongside many species before they mysteriously disappeared. Their technology had seeded entire ecosystems. They had built not just machines, but life. It became clear that the humans had not simply returned to claim something. They had come back to check if their creation had survived. And when they saw the galaxy still standing, still fighting to understand itself, they chose to leave again, trusting that this time, the universe would learn. As centuries passed, the silent warship became the symbol of change. Every year, people from across the stars gathered to remember the day it appeared. They didn't celebrate war or power. They celebrated understanding, unity, and restraint. Monuments were built on countless worlds. A black silhouette of a ship hovering over a glowing circle, representing both the moon and the light that spread across the galaxy. In classrooms, children learned not just about what happened, but about why it mattered. Teachers explained that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or ships. It was its ability to stop, to think, and to act only when truly needed. That idea began shaping new generations. Peace wasn't seen as weakness anymore. It was seen as courage. On one distant world, an old scholar stood before his students and told them a story that had been passed down through time. He said that long ago humanity faced a choice to control the galaxy through force or to lead it through wisdom. They chose wisdom, even if it meant disappearing into the unknown, and one day when the stars were ready they might return again, not as conquerors but as teachers. That idea spread quietly and slowly. The galaxy began to live differently. The Council changed its laws, focusing less on dominance and more on preservation. Trade routes became safer, borders faded, and cooperation grew stronger. The silence left behind by the humans had become a foundation for peace, but the universe never forgets. Centuries later, deep in a sector far beyond the edge of mapped space, explorers detected a faint distortion. It wasn't a star nor a natural phenomenon. It was a familiar kind of gravity pulse, subtle, powerful, deliberate. They turned their scanners toward it, and for just a moment they saw it. A massive shadow moving slowly through the void. No light, no sound, just presence. Then it vanished again, leaving behind a calm pulse of energy that spread through the darkness. When the data reached the core worlds, there was no panic, only quiet wonder. People looked up at the night sky and smiled. They knew what it meant. Humanity was still there, still watching, still guiding, still keeping balance in ways no one could fully understand. The galaxy had learned its lesson. It didn't need proof anymore. It didn't need to see the warship again. It only needed to remember that peace and awareness were the greatest strengths of all. The historian who recorded that final sighting wrote one last line before closing his log. They came when we were blind with pride. They left when we began to see. The humans did not conquer the galaxy, they awakened it. After that, the galaxy carried on quietly, not in fear but in harmony. New civilizations rose, old ones evolved, and through it all, the legend of the human warship remained alive, not as a warning, but as a promise. And somewhere beyond the reach of any telescope, in the deep silence of the cosmos, the warship drifted among the stars. It carried the light of humanity, steady, patient, eternal, watching, waiting, and believing that one day, the galaxy they once knew would finally understand what it truly meant to be human.